RME network has now around 45 members, and it's just still at early stages. But the dedication and the vision that is at its core is unwavering. And I would like now to open the floor to my three dear colleagues, Paulina, Tony, and Renee, to share with you their vision on the network and also the plans and next steps that lie ahead.
I was a university president for 22 years, and so getting up and speaking in front of an audience is sort of a regular part of what one does, and one learns very quickly that the last place you want to be is the speaker between the end of the program and the cocktail hour. So I recognize that we got to do this fast so we can go next door and relax after a pretty intense afternoon. Maybe just a little bit for the folks who are here for the first time, a background and the emerging reality that might be here. When I finished as president of Sacred Heart University, and after sabbatical time, I went to take over as president of a Center for Interreligious Understanding. And in the second year of my time at that center, I suggested that we needed to look at interreligious dialogue, recognize the work of what the center was doing, which was largely academic and intellectual and very necessary, especially at that point in the Catholic-Jewish relations, but that there was another invitation out there going forward in terms of fostering interreligious understanding, and that was by bringing people of different traditions together to do good work. We picked 4 areas of work: children in poverty, orphans, victims of human trafficking, and refugees. And in our first year, we did all the things that you do when you're starting a new foundation, being the blessing in terms of legal status and the rest of it. And we worked on the premise that partnering was the right way to go forward. The rare occasion where we would do something on our own. And in the summer of 2016, I was taking a walk down the best road in the world. It's a road in Elmira, New York, in the hamlet of Pine City, through a field of dairy farms. And I was thinking about what were we doing about refugees and what we want to do, and I was thinking about political aspects, the wonderful work of so many of the relief agencies, and then being an old college president, I said to myself, well, what are universities doing about the issue of refugee and migrants, especially in the area of education? And again, being a good old president, what was the right thing to do when you aren't sure about something? You hold a conference. So I had, during my tenure as president at Sacred Heart University, also for 12 years had been the president of the International Federation of Catholic Universities. So I called my counterpart, who had worked there for as many years as I was vice president and president, and I said, Loic, I have this idea about doing a conference on universities and refugee education. He said, terrific, we'd love to be part of it. On the basis of that, I called a man who took over as president of the Federation, a Jesuit from Brazil, Pedro Rubens. I told Pedro about the idea. He said, this is wonderful, let's do it. That led to the meeting that Monica just talked about, and then the conference last year in Rome, the first week of Rome, which had 2 fundamental outcomes, or hopes in terms of outcomes. One was to create an opportunity for people to share best practices, people who had been involved in some forms of refugee education and wanted to share those with others and learn from one another. And then the idea of keeping that conversation going, of keeping people, institutions that were interested in collaborating, and that's a key word, on refugee education, in touch with one another. And it's really from that second part that this network was born, Refugee and Migrant Education Network. In this past year, we've done the kinds of things you would expect. We started looking at how do we create a legal structure for this organization? How do you build a website? How do you get the conversation going between institutions? And as Monica mentioned, there's 45 thereabouts. And then we decided to do this conference this year and to do it in New York because of the discussions going on at the UN around the Global Compact on refugees and also on migration. So here we are today. A network that's really still in the early stages of birthing. So as we proceed over the next 2 days, the snow will melt by tomorrow morning, they assure me. We need your advice, your thoughts about how to continue to shape this network into something that perhaps can be valuable in providing more educational opportunities for refugees. So with that in mind, I'll just turn it over to Renee.
I'm going to say something about the aims of the network and what you're trying to achieve. So I think one interesting feature of this this logo is the ampersand, the and sign. And I think obviously we've mentioned migrants and refugees, and trying to keep both sides together, which is obviously not easy in the political climate today. Obviously, there are groups of migrants who are not refugees, but who would benefit from education, and who are not migrants simply because they like to go around the world and they have nothing else to do. Obviously, Stephen Rash mentioned IDPs. I would include IDPs within the word migrants. My mother, during the Second World War, moved 9 kilometers from a port city in Malta to a farming community. They were called refugees in the new place where they went, which is 9 kilometers away. They were considered strangers, and they were treated as strange people. This is in the island of Malta. So obviously, after 1951, the word refugee is linked to people who have crossed an international border. But let's remember that there are people who need help, or who are worthy of attention by the international community, but also by our universities and colleges, as part of this responsibility, social responsibility towards people on the move who are in a vulnerable situation. The and, or the ampersand also, for me, represents the desire to keep a number of issues together. So it's easy for us, it's easy for me as a guy from the university world to say, okay, let me focus on what I do best, which is do research. Maybe we'll think a bit about education. So certainly we should do what we do best, but let's see how widely we can interpret that. So we've put 3 words together in our logo, which is to connect, to educate, and to do research. And I think what we're trying to toss out to you today is to have, first of all, as universities, we have resources to offer. We have a social responsibility, and we have a voice in civil society. Obviously, in the current political climate to have a voice in civil society when some of the political parties are moving towards xenophobia and towards populism. I think that's a big responsibility. We have connections and we have resources that secondary schools don't have. Obviously, a secondary school can't go around the world networking, even though most of the education which is needed at this time would be secondary schooling. A good number of refugees have some sort of primary schooling. But we want to look at secondary schooling and at beyond that, at the possibility of some of these refugees, okay, let's start with some who can be multipliers, but to have university education. So to set that as an objective, even though it may seem very lofty, a lot of refugees don't even finish primary school. Very few actually get into a secondary school program. This obviously sets us to think about what possibilities we have to educate and what kinds of education we can provide. Like we started off with partnering with the International Federation of Catholic Universities. A lot of Catholic universities offer liberal arts degrees. So let's see what we can do with that resource. So it's a network still in a gestational phase. Stephen Rash mentioned it can be nimble in this sense. But we can work with secondary education, which is one of the areas which is very much required. So teacher training. A lot of Catholic universities around the world started as teacher training colleges and built on that. So what can universities do? Going back to those three words, certainly educate their students as multipliers, as people who can speak up in civil society and help their families and the people around them understand the situation of migrants and refugees around the world, not filtered through the fake media, but also educate refugees and migrants within their campuses. On the other hand, some universities have the resources even to offer education to migrants and refugees at university camps through partnering or in conflict areas through partnering with local universities or through technology. So we don't want to exclude that possibility. Second word is research. Obviously, we're interested to know what works in educating our students and the people around them, their families, the people in our cities, on this topic, which is currently so hotly debated and where there's a lot of misinformation. It's not just a question of educating the head, there's also a question of educating the heart, because a lot of the debates are done using raw emotions. So how can we do this? I think our background as small colleges, but also some of us within faith traditions, can help in understanding what works and what doesn't in educating the person integrally to understand this, not just at the level of the head and the level of statistics, but also what works in educating refugees and migrants on our campuses, remembering the difficulties they may have given trauma, given language barriers, given family who do not have a tradition of people going to college or not having a family to support them. But also what works with these new online technology within refugee camps, what's working, what isn't. So we've highlighted a number of these things this evening, and we'd like you to continue to work, to continue to think on all of these possibilities. Obviously, the last word is to connect. So connect people, connect also universities and NGOs to one another, and to try to see what we can do together. We want to open all of these avenues, keep all of this palette of options open, since different members of our network or potential members can offer different things. We don't want to come to focus too much. I think, however, what we're trying to do is quite focused. Huh? So, in a way, we received last year from Pope Francis this mission which has all of these elements listed, but also I think it makes sense even for people who do not come from a Catholic or religious background to see this need in our world and to try to respond to it and provide real solutions to the real problems. So, in this vein, I just continue to invite you during this evening and in the coming days to talk to one another, write down your ideas, we'll be able to post them and try to figure out what we can offer together. We have to start building with what we have. We can dream, and I think we can hope, and we can provide and continue to provide ideas to one another in order to build something bigger. But I think we need to start with some concrete projects. We've already started with something little, but at this point, I think we need to go beyond organizing conferences and trying to start to showcase some of the projects of working in education or research with refugees and migrants.
I know we're all hungry, so I'll try to be quick. Institutions usually have a home, have an office somewhere in the world, whether it's Rome or New York or Paris or London. Well, we don't. We talk about refugees and migrants, we don't have a home. Our office is either Tony's living room in Connecticut, Renee's office at the Gregorian, my office at the Pontifical University in Krakow / my kitchen table, or Monica's home in Germany. So we're all over the place. That's how we work. That's how we connect through Hangouts. It's really convenient. We love technology. So we don't have an office, a real one, but we have a virtual office that you all can visit. We've built that in our team, along with the help of our interns and wonderful people. We're all volunteers in the network, and the only goal that we have is this, giving birth to hope and turning hopes into realities. So what Renee just said, the 3 elements of the network. Connection. So you will find all the members of the network on our website. You can read about them, you can read about what they do, and we facilitate that connection. So we bring those institutions together so we can build a better future for refugees and migrants, so that these institutions that are members or would like to join can learn from one another. Another point that also Renee mentioned is education. So we're here to learn, and we're here to implement refugee and migrant education. But as Stephen Rush said, not to get credit for it, but to actually help somebody, to actually change somebody's world, life. That's what we're here for, and we encourage you to take a look at our website. As Renee said, there are not that many projects running, but some are running, and you can learn, you can join some research projects, you can learn from excellent programs ran by NGOs all over the world, including refugee camps, and you'll hear all about them tomorrow during the panels, during the workshops. Over the next year, we're planning to organize, not conferences, but webinars. So exact knowledge, to implement exact knowledge on particular projects in refugee and migrant education, and those will be both webinars for scholars and university management to learn, but also for peers, because we would like our students to know the students on the other side of the ocean. We want them to know Innocent from Kakuma refugee camp. We want them to know Yusuf from Erbil, Iraq. We want them to know people from Thailand. We want them to connect to students from Australian Catholic University. And that's what we'll organize using our little office, our website. as university teachers, they pay us for research and for thinking. So we definitely encourage you to start projects together, because if we can start those projects globally, connecting our institutions, it will be useful, it will change the world of someone. And refugee communities can definitely benefit from it, and that's what we would dream of our research to be about. Something life-changing, something very practical. Sometimes at universities, and we have to admit that, we do work that lands only in our journals. Well, we want to facilitate work that lands somewhere at the table and changes the world of a refugee. How do we work? Well, we have an auditor at the Synod, and Pope Francis said at the end of the Synod that the Synod was an apostolate of the year. So I would like to, it's a little steal it from Pope Francis and say we're an apostolate of the year. We want to hear from our members, because that's what the network is all about. To hear from members about exciting projects that you would like to share with others, and we are the platform to do that. Well, as Ronald Reagan said, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And I do hope that this is the hub that is giving birth to a hope, and your presence is a proof of it. And to give a birth of a hope, you need a lot of people, and I'm glad we have you in the room. And if we are to help only one person to educate, for me, for us at RF Network, this is turning hopes into reality. So I encourage you to join the network, and above all, I would like to thank the members of the network who came here all the way from Australia, Iraq, and all those exciting places on earth to join us in New York and share the story of the network.